is not. Shall I say that again?
Please.
The January 18th meeting of the Palm Springs Sustainability Commission is now called to order. Tracy, would you do the roll call, please?
Yes. Vice Chair Friedman,
Here.
Commissioner Baker,
Here.
Commissioner Barrett,
Here.
Commissioner Evans,
Here.
Commissioner Futterman, Commissioner Ocanias, here, and Commissioner Torrens. Commissioner Torrens is in the waiting room. I'm admitting him now.
Okay, great.
And Commissioner Futterman is in the waiting room and is being admitted now as well.
So I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting this evening. It appears that all of our commissioners, our 8 current commissioners, are here, and it also appears that we don't have any visitors right now. So the first thing on the agenda is the acceptance of the agenda, which was emailed and posted last Thursday, the 13th of January. Are there any comments or objections on the agenda? Hearing none, then the agenda is accepted. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to staff comments. Tracy has provided a memo with some information from the staff, and I expect that she and Flynn may have some additional comments.
Thank you, Chair Clark. I provided an update just of upcoming council meetings, of dates that we're proposing, items to go forward on. Also, just a recap of the airport demonstration garden, which is going well and has a completion date of the end of February. Arbor Day is something new that actually Stacy Schaefer in our facilities department is spearheading, but it goes in alignment with our objectives. So just wanted to have folks save that date on their calendar, and also looking for volunteers. So hoping that everybody can participate. Were there any questions of any of the items listed on that on the staff comments? Yes, Vice Chair Friedman.
Question on strategic planning. Was this what happened at this past Thursday's meeting? Because there was a very substantial presentation of the results of the 2 visioning sessions from council. So I wasn't sure whether anything was expected in addition on the 27th to what happened already on the 13th.
I'll discuss that in just a moment.
Okay.
Commissioner Barrett.
Just a question, when we list EV charger, is that an EV charger level 2 or level 3? Do we know those things?
We do know those things, and I can certainly specify in the future.
Okay.
And the ones that are being installed at Museum Garage are a combination of level 2 and 3.
Oh,
and
really?
at City Hall, level 2.
Okay. And I was curious about the one with the scholarship at Indulge.
That was a charger that they purchased actually through Amazon and self-installed at their property.
And they don't tell you whether it's obviously a level 2 then, I would assume. Yeah.
I would make the same assumption.
Okay,
And
thank
what's
you.
the distinction between a level 2 and a level 3 for us sites who are still using gas-powered engines?
Level 3 is basically what you use if you have a Tesla, because it will charge it much faster. Most of us with cheaper
Less expensive.
partial electrics use level 2 or level 1.
Oh, they're 3. Oh, okay.
Yeah, level 1 is just standard household voltage. Level 2 is 240, I think, and level 3 is skyrocketing.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
With that, let me go ahead and discuss the city council priorities that were on the agenda on the January 13th city council agenda. Let me attempt to share my screen just so I can pull those up. And so for those of you who may have been watching the city council meeting on the 13th, last fall, the city council held 2 visioning sessions. And the point of those sessions was for the city council to identify their priorities as a way to focus staff efforts on projects. Our city council is very ambitious. There's a lot of things that they want to get done, but we do have limited staff and limited resources. And so it's important that we prioritize the things that are most important to them to accomplish. Now, as you'll see, they've identified priorities in 4 different areas: quality of life, environmental stewardship, community infrastructure, and good governance. But the items that fall specifically into the area of focus for Sustainability Commission is environmental stewardship, and that occupies one of the 4 categories that the city council identified. And so environmental stewardship is very much of importance to the city council. In their discussion on Thursday night, while they were still finalizing some of those priorities, their discussion of environmental stewardship went relatively rapidly, and there was not much discussion relative to that, meaning that there wasn't a lot of need to modify what the city manager had put together in terms of the 3 focus areas under environmental stewardship. And so I think that's a good sign. What does that mean for you all as the Sustainability Commission? Number one of the first things that the council has agreed to as a priority is that we need to have additional staff members in the Office of Sustainability in order to accomplish these projects. And as Chair Clark and Vice Chair Friedman have discussed with us over the past couple of weeks, there's a lot of things we want to get done. And in order to do them, we just need more staff to do it. And so additional staff members is something that's important to that. Also looking at accelerating the climate action plan, in addition to staffing, completing the greenhouse gas analysis, and then identifying high value projects and initiatives. And that's one of the things that we're going to be asking you later in this evening's meeting, is to identify some of your priorities. I can think of a couple of projects that we've already got underway: the commercial energy standards and the residential energy standards. Those are certainly things that we want to get done in the next little while, but there may be other projects that you all want to prioritize as well. In the second category, it's labeled Consider New Policies. One of those is implementation of SB 1383 relative to organic waste and how we deal with that. You'll also see that desert community energy is another area there, and Commissioner Friedman, you'll be assisting us with that one. Commercial renewable energy standards, we've already mentioned that. Community composting, we've been in discussions with a group who wants to start that, and so that's something that we hope to be working on. And then one other thing that may not be solely the responsibility of the Sustainability Commission is clarified land conservation goals. This will probably fall mostly under the Planning Commission, as they are currently looking at an update to the general plan, and more specifically to the land use element of the general plan. But certainly this is something that is important to the city as we think about environmental stewardship. And then finally, the last category is developing internal policies and practices. The first one is to integrate sustainability with other departments, divisions, and initiatives. One of the things that we've talked about is integrating our sustainability plan as part of the general plan. And so that will be working with the planning division to do that. As we integrate that with the general plan, that means that planning staff, as well as building and engineering staff, will need to look at sustainability policies as we evaluate projects. And so certainly that's something that's very important. Also creating green purchasing policies in terms of the materials that we use here at City Hall or we use with major organizations here in the city of Palm Springs. Another thing that may not be directly on that list is, as we talked about last month, our use of paper for agendas. And so certainly something that we want to promote as an important part of environmental stewardship. So the City Council held their initial discussion last Thursday night on this. They will complete that discussion at the meeting of the 27th. They're primarily going to focus that discussion, as I understand it, on the last category, that being good governance, which they did not really discuss in detail. One of the other things that needs to happen is that staff needs to flesh out action plans for all of these measures. And what we hope to do is at an upcoming City Council study session, tentatively scheduled for February, we'll begin to look at specifics. In order for us as staff to do that, we do need your input this evening on identifying some of your prioritized items. That will assist us in putting together a work plan that we will then present to the City Council. So with that, that concludes my presentation to you on City Council priorities. Happy to answer any questions that the Commission may have at this time.
Are there any questions for Flynn?
Flynn, hi, it's Carl. I have one quick question. So is budget somehow integrated into this, or they're totally separate?
No, absolutely. It's an integrated part of this discussion. As I mentioned about adding staff members, that requires us to add to the budget for the Office of Sustainability. And doing that, City Council will also consider all of these projects that they've identified for priorities in terms of the city's budget that's going to be coming forward. I think our budget discussions start around March or April of this year. But as they identify projects that are priorities, they will also fund those accordingly. So yes, budget is integrated in these discussions.
Thanks.
Also, I know in some areas, the city edited some things out. I don't know about in our areas. Do we have a sort of finalized list we're going to get, or if they already accepted everything that's within the sustainability column?
They've pretty much accepted it. They haven't taken the final vote on that yet. I would suspect that they would do that on the 27th. I would say at this point, their discussion on the sustainability items is more or less completed. I wouldn't anticipate that they would have much discussion as they've already gone through that list on the 13th.
Good, okay.
And I do want to remind everybody of the special session that the commission had last October 5th. One of the things that we did besides looking at revising the sustainability plan was to set our priorities which was specifically requested from the city staff. And there was a form that was filled out with our current and our near-term major priorities. And it looks to me like just about everything that we had on that form did end up on the list, which I think is very significant.
It is. Not all boards and commissions had that level of success.
Thank you, Flynn. That was very helpful. The next item that we have is on the agenda is public comments. It looks like we don't have any visitors, so we'll move on then to presentations. We have one presentation this evening that had been requested a couple meetings ago by Vice Chair Friedman on guidance on electronic records and the public integrity ordinance. And we have the city clerk, Anthony Mejia, here tonight, this evening, to give a brief presentation on those topics.
Good evening, Clark and the commission. When it comes to the electronic records policy, I'm going to ask to defer that. The city council has not yet adopted the policy. The city attorney presented it to the city council a few months ago. However, it still needs to go through our employee unions and associations for meet and confer. And then once it goes through that process, it'll return to council for final approval. And then I'd certainly be happy to provide an update on whatever's been adopted. With that, on the public integrity ordinance, I'm going to be reading from a memo the city attorney prepared, and it will be distributed to all of the commissioners very soon. But in December 2021, the city council adopted a revision to the public integrity ordinance. The revised ordinance applies to city commissioners who serve in their private capacity, either on a board of a nonprofit entity without compensation, as an accountant or attorney providing pro bono services to a nonprofit entity, or as a trustee of a charitable trust. In those situations, under the currently revised ordinance, commissioners must recuse themselves from participating before the city on any matter before the city when such nonprofit or trust has an interest in the particular matter. Previously, commissioners had to recuse themselves only when the nonprofit or trust had actually filed an application for the matter before the city. So if a commissioner also serves as a member of a nonprofit board of directors without compensation, and the nonprofit entity has an interest, even if it's not a financial interest, in a particular matter, then that commissioner would be prohibited from advocating for a particular result on the issue. I'll give you an example. An example would be a planning commissioner who serves without compensation on a nonprofit that is looking to build a new headquarters on a piece of real property that it owns. If the property were being redesignated as open space as part of a city-initiated general plan update, the commissioner would be prohibited from voting as a planning commissioner on that portion of the general plan update when it comes before the commission. The commissioner would likewise be prohibited from contacting council members, either verbally or in writing, urging them to vote on a particular way on that aspect of the general plan update. However, it bears pointing out that the expanded prohibition only applies to the city official and the nonprofit board member. Other representatives of the nonprofit would still be able to advocate for their position on the particular issue. And I'm certainly happy to answer questions or provide some clarification if you have some questions.
Anthony, I think you just clarified my major question of before the city, and it sounds, and this is what I interpreted, but just want a confirmation, that before the city is broad, so it goes beyond the body that you serve on, and you can't show up at some other commission or city council, and that's how I interpreted, and that's what Mr. Ballinger's memo said, but I just want to confirm that because that is broader than the previous version, which applied generally just to the commission that you were serving on. So am I correct that before the city has a broader interpretation now?
Absolutely. So the idea is ensuring that commissioners aren't using their influence to influence a city decision, even if it doesn't have a financial interest in that matter. If you're providing pro bono services, either as an attorney, an accountant, or a board member on that nonprofit.
Okay, and it also applies to showing up at city council. Yeah, exactly. All right, that's my interpretation, but I appreciate the confirmation of that new text. Thank you. That was my question.
And this memo will be going out in its full entirety to every commissioner so that they're aware of these new rules.
Are there any more questions for Anthony? Apparently not. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Then we'll move on. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes, the minutes for the December 21st regular meeting. They were emailed and posted last Thursday, January 13th. Is there any discussion or comments on the minutes from that meeting? Then hearing no comments, the minutes have been approved. Thank you. Moving right along, the next item is old business, and there is none for this evening. Under new business, the first item is the residential energy and water efficiency rebate program. You'll recall that that was on the agenda for the meeting in December. And there had been a memo from Patrick and a draft staff report, basically proposing transfer of funds or requesting transfer of funds to set up a program, much like the scholarship program for residential energy and water efficiency upgrades for providing rebates. At that time, Vice Chair Friedman had provided a memo with some comments on the staff report, but unfortunately we were unable to get that to the commissioners in time to review it before the December meeting. So we talked a little bit about the topic, but we decided to form a subcommittee to take a closer look at the proposal and to determine how we wanted to move forward. I think Tracy covered that in a memo that's included in the agenda packet, but there was a meeting that included Tracy and me, let's see, Commissioner Barrett and Vice Chair Friedman and Director Fag. And we basically talked about what items should be on the list, what types of projects, and we wanted to bring them back as a recommendation and for discussion this evening. Primarily, we removed the water efficiency projects that are already being done by the DWA, but one of the concerns in the discussion was the difficulty in engaging in some of the projects. Specifically, is a permit required, and would it be an onerous process for the individual to go through to get a permit? And that had been reviewed, and the results of that review are in the memo from Tracy. Basically, there's a list of projects there that could be considered under this program. And I believe the conclusion is that the permitting process is pretty standard. It's not expensive or onerous. It's pretty straightforward. So it shouldn't be a barrier to any homeowner wanting to do any of these projects. So I think I've summarized that fairly well, in addition to what's in Tracy's memo. But the point tonight is for us to determine if that's in line with what we'd like to do as a commission on those types of projects, verify that $500 maximum is what we would like, or some other amount, and then we can move forward. I believe that the reason that Patrick had written the memo in the staff report initially was not to really nail down the specifics of the types of projects, but to get approval for the transfer of funds so we could do that program. And that's something we may still want to continue with. So with that, is there any discussion about the program, the rebate program?
Roy?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that it might help in this document actually to say something like what you just said, that the reason we're even talking about permit status in here is that the commissioner has raised concerns about whether permitting would affect the expediency of doing a project. And so I think it would help to put that note in this document. Am I making sense? You sort of said it yourself a few minutes ago.
Yes. And that was the reason and that's what we discussed at that subcommittee meeting. That's right.
Yeah, so I would advocate that we note that in the document.
And in the minutes.
Yeah.
David, did you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of points, and it's a question of sort of how this is reflected in various documents, whether it's the staff report or the program terms. And I guess probably the one point that I think we really should get commissioner guidance on is my suggestion that there be a reservation of 40%, but it could be potentially a different number, and it's for council determination of set aside for care and FARA recipients. This really is best practice on energy programs. I'll mention the governor's budget that it has that, but that's probably something that I think it is appropriate procedurally to get the commissioner's input so that that's reflected in what goes to council. And once again, it's a council determination But I would recommend that as somebody who's now working on a lot of energy programs, there is a strong equity component, and I would strongly recommend that. The rest of it can be, you know, between the staff report and the program terms, just making sure that is aligned in terms of what Title 24 and Title 20 for water fixtures there. But, you know, those are details that I think could be largely be reflected in the implementation materials for the program. For example, it's not water sense, it's Title 20. That's a little different standard in California than the federal standard, but you know, that doesn't necessarily need to get into that level of detail. The staff report can simply say, you know, it'll be aligned, program will be aligned for the matters that are covered under state jurisdiction. It would be aligned with state standards. I don't really, you know, and then with my details can go in the implementation, you know, what should I do? Here's the whole list of this is what you should do, kind of thing. So that's really I think most of it is in, you know, a little bit in the staff report, a lot in the implementation materials, but I think probably it would be good to get commissioner feedback on my proposal that there would be an equity component to this program.
Does anybody have a comment or opinion on the equity component that David just brought up?
Yeah, so I would totally agree with that, and believe that at least initially some kind of needs-based criteria should be included.
Yeah, and it would be, you know, as that 40% council would make the determination of the percentage, and the easy way to do eligibility is CARE, FERA, and potentially medical baseline. These are the energy rebate, well, not rebate, the discounts that you get. These are the utility discount programs, and it literally shows up on your electricity bill every month and your gas bill as well. So it's really easy to submit that document.
I would just add, and I've worked in programs similar to that where they did have a needs-based component, and then oftentimes though there can be a kind of a timeline where if the funds aren't expended by a certain date, then eligibility would open up.
Yeah, that makes sense. The challenge is Commissioner Barrett is known is the folks who live in mobile home parks who don't get electricity bills directly, and we can work on the detail of, because I believe Commissioner Barrett, those folks will have filed an application with Edison or the gas company to get the discount. I think that's what you had sent in the
Yes.
memo. So
Yes, they can document that they're getting CARES. They can.
yeah, that's what I thought. So that's a detail for the, you know, for the implementation of the list of documents that you need to produce. But I think the point for council is the recommendation that there be an equity component.
Are there any other comments on that point? Or is there a general consensus that we should include the equity component?
My only concern would be that we had mentioned this in the last time. We don't actually have the staff to be doing this.
Well, that's another topic that we'll be getting into. That's right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not a lot of money, and it becomes overhead. But I do agree with the equity component.
And I'm happy to work on, you know, implementation and all that stuff. It obviously falls, I do it on sort of my city hat, but it clearly falls within the scope of my program manager duties at DCE to be working on designing energy efficiency programs. So I'm happy to help out, at least in the design phase.
What about the amount, the maximum of $500? That's something that we discussed in our subcommittee meeting, and thought we would bring it back to the commission to see if it was felt that that was sufficient. The higher the amount, the fewer the awards could be, assuming the people asked for the maximum amount. But the $500 was targeted initially.
When we met last week or so, I don't remember what the amount was that was suggested at that time, because I had suggested having it mainly out of the equity issues. So they would be distributed more toward others, but I mean, 500 is sounding reasonable to me now. I'm not sure, was it originally higher? Does anyone remember?
I think you had suggested 300 in your sort of,
Right.
your set of comments, but
Yeah.
maybe that makes, I mean, some things like some fixtures are pretty reasonable, like water efficiency. The estimate for that is $208 from the state for the whole water efficiency package. Other things like insulation are going to be a lot more, but you get a big bang for your buck when you do that. You get substantial reductions in your electricity bills.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I don't have a lot of hesitancy around 500 at this point.
Are there any other thoughts on that?
The only other thought, but it's sort of for something that I'm working on at DCE, and that was confirmed, is that we're going to be working on compiling a list of available energy efficiency programs through either the gas company and Edison or else various state programs. So that's on the DCE sort of to-do list. It may take a while, but we will provide that so people can know, hey, in addition to whatever you may get from the city, here are some other programs that are available, and we'll cross pollinate, if you will, to make sure that that is going both on the DCE and the Office of Sustainability website. So let folks know that even if it doesn't cover everything in the city program, there may be additional resources available.
So thank you for the discussion. Is it a general consensus then that we should go forward with this, with the projects that are listed in the memo from Tracy and $500 limit? I guess also initially it was proposed that it be no more than 1/2 cost of the project or $500.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I can work on, just sort of the tweak of the list to, just the kind of the language that I had sent in that memo.
Okay. I move that we adopt.
And with the, is it 40, do we say 40%? The recommendation is equity component of 40%?
David, didn't you say that it was 25% of the population?
It's 25% of the population. 40% is a number that I've seen in some programs. We can give the council sort of, maybe we just say at least 25%. Maybe I'm not wed to the 40% number, but we should probably say at least 25%. Maybe we should leave it at that. And the staff report can say, here's some examples of, for example, the federal is 40%, et cetera. I defer to you, Chair Clark, about whether you want to put a set number or just a minimum number.
Okay. And actually, I'd like to ask for some guidance from Flynn on this, because we just talked about the City Council's process of establishing priorities, and from the meeting on the 13th, it sounds like they're going to be pretty rigid in terms of following what's on the priority list. How much chance do we have of adding this in at this point? We don't know what I think we have a pretty good idea from what you presented of what they are going to consider. This is sort of outside of that list. Is this something that we will have a chance of bringing up in the relatively near future?
Yeah, absolutely, because this has been something that the Sustainability Commission has been working on for some time. We can easily incorporate it in with the other priorities of City Council. One of the categories, which is fairly broad in terms of its statement, is to target high-value projects. I would classify this as one of those high-value projects for the Sustainability Commission, and certainly something that we would forward as part of the work plan to the City Council. Tracy, I don't think you disagree with that, would you? So yeah,
I'm in
I think
agreement.
that's fine.
Okay, so it seems like we've agreed pretty much on the general parameters of this request, and it's really a matter of going forward with a staff report that would go to the city council. I believe that Patrick had intended it initially to be on the consent calendar. So that probably takes much less of the time of the city council than if it was on the regular part of the agenda.
Yeah, and it's easier for us to schedule as part of the agenda when it goes on the consent calendar. So that's easy enough to do.
So shall we then move ahead? Flynn, would you be the one to write that, or somebody on your staff, the staff report?
Tracy will assist me with that staff report.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm happy to edit it just as sort of the tweaks for the a couple of just the reflect. There's I think a lot of it that I already sent in my various markups, but I'm happy to help out on just some quick.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Do we need to get a vote on the equity component or a recommendation of, let's say, at least 25% and leave it for council? I don't have a hard, I would say a minimum of 25% because that's the rough population. And maybe we would just simply say is that the commission recommends an equity component of at least 25%, and then give a couple of examples in case council wanted to increase it beyond the 25%. That would probably be a fair way of putting it up. For example, X program.
Yeah, I think that's a good starting point in terms of 25%, at least 25%. And so that does give us the ability, should we want to really encourage that component of it, we can go beyond 25%.
Yeah.
And certainly I think there would be support for that from city council.
Yeah. Okay, I'll reflect that because I have the details of what particularly the federal and state equity components are looking at.
So I guess the question is, do we have a consensus, or do we need a vote? I would suggest that if everybody agrees to what we've just discussed, then we can go ahead. It's a matter of timing as to when we can get the staff report done.
Yeah, I'm fine with our discussion, and I will thank everyone for accommodating the concerns, and DC folks know that this is happening and are, appreciative of the effort.
So, well, thank you all for your comments, and that concludes that portion of the new business. The next item is World Environment Day 2022 budget request. Commissioner Futterman, do you have anything to present to us?
I do. Happy New Year, everyone.
Thank you. Same to you.
So I know that we have, some new commissioners, and you may not know a little bit of the history of this. So I will try to it's changed names, and it's changed a little bit over the years, but for many years, our Sustainability Commission has been a primary sponsor of the Environmental Education Collaborative's annual environmental art contest. This is a contest open to all students in Riverside and San Bernardino counties. It's open to preschoolers through 12th graders. We have a special needs category. It's been opened up to adults. So, really everyone is invited to participate that's interested. 2022 will be our third year of presenting a virtual art contest. And this provides an essential opportunity really for community engagement during this ongoing pandemic. This year's theme is water and justice. So all submissions will relate to water, justice, or the intersection of the two. Artists may submit two-dimensional or three-dimensional visual art, an essay or creative writing piece, or a video showcasing performance art. We had over 200 submissions last year, and we'd like to continue to grow this. Our Sustainability Commission once had a number of outreach events that were effective in bringing awareness to local environmental issues, and which brought environmental agencies together in celebration of our beautiful desert and common goals to make the Coachella Valley a model of sustainability in lifestyle and community practices. Our World Environment Day celebration became our signature event, which brought together all kinds of agencies, environmental educators, artists. We had hundreds of community members come out to celebrate with us. This also was where we had the environmental art award ceremony and the exhibition of the art. For the foreseeable future, unfortunately, we cannot plan an in-person event. But continuing to sponsor the art contest is a way to continue to engage with our community. So in the past, we spent up to $5,000 when we got billboards and other things to advertise our event. Last year, for the art contest alone, we provided $1,200 towards the prizes. So the cost for all of the prizes that we had was over $4,000 last year. So we're inviting so many people to participate in this. And there's the 3 different categories which changed. We used to only have visual art. So it's really opened it up to the literary art community and the performing artists. So I'm requesting that our commission take the lead role this year in sponsoring half of the prizes at $2,000 or whatever you feel is appropriate. I'm not really sure what we have in the budget in this area, but we'll be continuing to raise, the extra money, towards matching those funds to be able to provide these prizes. I also invite anyone on the commission, if you'd like to join me, in promoting the event. I think water is, of course, something that we all are invested in. And I think, the more that kids think about our environmental resources and the treasures that we have, it encourages this amazing opportunity to be critical thinkers in a creative way. So especially because we're still in this pandemic, it's such an interesting way to interact with kids and also adults. So that's what I present to you.
Jennifer, besides promoting, last year you had some specific assistance from some of the commissioners, I think reviewing or judging the.
Yes, we did. And that is absolutely open to everyone. So having it be virtual, you can do it from home. You can judge all 3 categories of the visual arts, performing arts, and literary arts, or just one. So that's totally up to you, whatever you have time for. But we would most be grateful for your participation in that, and also just getting the word out about the event. So we don't have a flyer yet. That's all, being worked on right now. But I know that, some of you are going to be very passionate about water and justice. So I think last year we had air and justice. I like the justice aspect. I think it's an important one right now. So
you've made a request for $2,000 for prizes. I believe we would need a motion and a second on that, and then any discussion. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion, and then once it's seconded, I have just a suggestion for.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, David and Carl.
And my suggestion, Commissioner Fetterman, that you reach out to DWA, because it is a water, and they may be able to provide funds and also assist on outreach.
awesome. Great idea.
And just out of curiosity, how much did we give last year?
1,200.
Okay. Thanks.
We also, last year, we had a one-time grant from the Pony Barnes Foundation, which, as far as I understand, it was just like a one-time thing. So that's, it would be great if we could assume the lead role. I think it's aligned with our commission.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, then we should take a vote. What's the best way to work this, Tracy, with a virtual meeting? Shall we just raise our hands?
Let's do a hand raise for support, and do not raise your hand if you do not support the motion.
Do you mean raise your hand on the little icon or physically raise your?
Either one. It would probably be easiest just to raise it and I can count and see who's in support and who is not. Well, that looks unanimous from this angle.
Great.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, everybody. So we'll look forward to more updates as time goes on. And I would encourage people to volunteer for promotion. And I'd like to volunteer to be a reviewer.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll definitely do it again. It's a hard job though. It's hard to pick between some of those.
It is, isn't it? Thanks, Carl.
Okay, thank you. Then moving on, the next item under new business is near-term commission priorities. And this is something that came up subsequent to the December meeting. And Tracy sent out an email to all the commissioners with a list of items that we've been working on. I think there were 16 items there. And we were really concerned about using the resources that we have, the limited staff resources to work some of the projects, and with the recognition that established priorities were going to be implementation of SB 1383, implementation of the foodware ordinance, and several activities related to climate change, or the climate action roadmap, which still need to be fleshed out somewhat. So that list was sent out and people were asked to rate them high, medium, and low. Thus far, we've only received responses from 4 of the 8 commissioners. I have tabulated the responses so far and have an idea of what the more important ones are, according to the commissioners who replied, but I'm not really sure where to go with this tonight, other than to encourage the remaining commissioners to send in their responses.
Oh, I thought I missed a deadline, so that's why I didn't send it in.
Well, we established a deadline, then we extended it. It could have been any time up till.
Okay, I'll get it to you. I thought it was
Likewise.
already passed. That's why I was gonna do it this weekend. Like, oh, too late for this.
That's how I was. I'll do it too.
Thank you. Yeah, just, one of the things is there are a lot of things on our plate. There are some things, like one of the things on the list was Arbor Day. And now it turns out that the city is going to have a tree planting ceremony, which we're aware of. But this is something that really falls into sustainability and environment, and yet doesn't require work from our commission. So it's a win-win, really. It doesn't take our resources, but it's something that's going to happen, and it's something that's going to be significant. And I think there are other things on the list that fall into that category as well. But until we get replies from everybody, I'd suggest that we don't talk about it any further. Do you have any suggestions or comments on that process, Flynn?
No, Mr. Chair, I think that's fine. That once you receive all the responses from the commissioners, then you can continue that discussion and finalize your list.
And so we can just defer it to the February.
That's fine.
Thank you. And the next item on the agenda, the next category is
Roy, one quick question. I'm sorry, I was muted. Just considering the vagaries of email, I don't want to put work on Tracy, but could we know that she got it from us?
I was copied on the replies.
Okay.
So,
All right. So if I guess it would help to know if you didn't get it.
I got yours, Don.
Yours was received.
Okay. Thank you.
Then moving on to subcommittee and commissioner reports. The first is the Standing Subcommittee on Waste Reduction. Tracy, would you like to give the report in addition to what you submitted?
Yes, thank you, Chair Clark. as we talked about, SB 1383 is the priority project we have been working on. The franchise agreement discussions continue, but it appears that they are close to wrapping up. So I don't want to give an exact date of when it will go to council. I think I had indicated on the staff report February of 2022. We'll see if that is doable or not, but everyone is meeting and moving that forward. We're still working on an FAQ document. The biggest challenge has really been that implementation date, because there have been so many factors, whether it's the facility at Edom Hill, whether it is the delivery of the carts, of the new trucks that were ordered. You know, there was also a discussion, a side conversation today with Palm Springs Disposal of if we had implemented on July 1st and delivery of those carts, what about the impact to vacation home rentals and rentals decreasing in the summer months? What about our seasonal residents that live here, you know, primarily from October, November through May to June, and those carts being left at the, you know, on the street side. So more and more pieces to support an October 1st implementation date, which seems to be the date that we're sticking with. And then really having a multi-pronged approach with outreach, rolling it out with the initial phases of announcing that date. And then of course, giving more and more information to residents as we get closer to that date, but not wanting to give too much information because we don't want folks to start putting their food waste in with the green waste before PSDS is ready to collect. So several different moving parts. So the FAQ document is in process, but not completed yet. It's going back and forth with the city attorney's office. And then Cal Recycle is offering the first of their grants to help with 1383. So the maximum amount for Palm Springs is just over 63,000. So we're in the process of submitting that. One of the requirements is having an ordinance in place, which we do, which went into effect January 9th. So that is all looking good. And then just contacts from the media and some interviews airing both with the city manager and also with Palm Springs Disposal. So I provided that link in case anyone didn't see that. Any 1383 specific questions from anyone? Okay, and then moving on to the foodware ordinance. Things are going relatively well with that. Having the two consultants on board has helped immensely. They were able to contact almost 25% of our business owners that are affected by the ordinance just in the month of December. They have been continuing contact this month. We're going to be having in-person visits this week. So it's anticipated approximately another 100 businesses are being contacted during the month of January by the two consultants. I wanted to share just some of the feedback from businesses, just because it's been pretty universal, regardless of you know, what type of food service. You know, the financial impacts and the staffing impacts from COVID are the most substantial. You know, and businesses are feeling fatigued. So that's a lot of the feedback we've been receiving. And then also, you know, the compliance with 1383 is resonates more importantly to business owners than with the foodware ordinance, which makes sense where you have a state mandate versus a local mandate. But the consultants have been really great. Businesses have been communicating with them. They've been calling the office, sending emails. And so it has all been positive reports there. Let's see. And then with our downtown trash can signage, Chair Clark and I did an audit on New Year's Eve. we were shocked to find that our educational signage was not working. So another option is to possibly use CalRecycle's signage, which is has more images as to what goes into a recycling bin, maybe encouraging the correct item as opposed to the no used coffee cups and smoothie cups. And then Commissioner Torrens, I was going to ask if you had a chance to speak with the composting group. We haven't had communications in some time and wanted to see if you had had any success since our meeting.
I had so the short answer is I have been in communications with Haley. We were not able to meet, so I haven't been able to go through my list of items with her yet. So I will prioritize that. She had something come up that got in the way, and so I'll prioritize that so I have a better update for our next scour meeting, and then we will then be able to inform the rest of the commissioners then. And my goal is to understand where they're at with relative, like, have they broke ground? Where are they at with the new site? I also wanted to share the information that you provided last week about the other site that's been presented to them. We discussed some of the items around the franchise agreement, and also just kind of discuss if they might be a good stopgap between the implementation at the city level with collecting, or if we could be providing our food waste as community members to their program. So I've got a list. I will update you. My apologies that I haven't been able to get that going.
Your participation is appreciated, and thank you for doing that.
My pleasure.
Battery recycling project. I thought it would be nice to just give an annual overview that we were able to collect 50 containers, and we saved 1,471 pounds of batteries from going into the landfill last year. So I think that is a success. We'll see if we can't beat that number in 2022. And that's all I have, unless there are any waste related questions. Let's see, Jake, you have a hand up, and
Oh, I just was celebrating.
celebrating.
Yes, I do have a hand up. I was curious how the shredding and e-waste event went this Saturday at City Hall.
Shredding and e-waste event was a success, and there was no rain, so that was great. People are already inquiring when the next event is. So the next one is scheduled for Saturday, April 23rd. Okay. The information's on our website, but it went very smoothly.
I was also, am I speaking? Yes, I am. I was surprised at the number of people who came to the e-waste recycling with batteries. I just would have never thought about bringing the boxes of batteries to the e-waste recycling. I thought it was for computers. So there was a lot of that.
And also a thank you to Chair Clark and Commissioner Barrett for your assistance with the event. We certainly appreciated having you there. And not only did you donate your time, you also brought materials to recycle. So yay to both of you.
And we avoided getting hit by crazy drivers.
I just wanted to make one side comment. Having been there directing traffic from 8 to 10, noticing the types of cars that came through. There was a huge number. I think proportionally there were more Teslas that came through the recycling, the shredding event than any other make of car. And I think just about every other, there was at least one of every other major electric vehicle on the market. So if that's a good sample of what's in Palm Springs, I think that's really.
I noticed that too.
Actually, I noticed that there was a lot of Teslas being driven by people who you would never have thought would have been driving a Tesla. They were, this is going to sound terrible, but little old ladies and little old men driving Teslas. It's not young buyers buying them now.
Okay. Any more questions or comments for Tracy? Thank you, Tracy. forgot to mention when we started this section that we've reordered the topics in this section. Basically, we're now down to one standing subcommittee, which is waste reduction. The standing subcommittee on solar and green building now doesn't meet, but we'll be getting a regular report from David Friedman. So the reordering of the list really is to list the standing committee that we have and the one ad hoc subcommittee, and then the rest of the items are reports from liaisons or individuals. So the next item is the ad hoc subcommittee on strategic planning and general plan update. That's me, Vice Chair Friedman, and I forgot to put Randy's name though when I reordered the list. But basically, I have reached out to David on the planning in the planning office, and who is working on the update of the general plan. And I sent him the update of the sustainability plan and suggested that we get together sometime and talk about how we might integrate the two. So I just sent that recently and haven't gotten a response. That was David Newell. And so I'll continue to pursue that. I don't anticipate we'll do much more to the sustainability plan until we have a new manager in place. But we have documented the changes that were made when we had our special session in October. The next item is a solar and green building report. David?
Thank you, Chair Clark. So even though there isn't a committee, there's still a lot to report, particularly for the action items that council directed this past November. So the first good news is that I finally heard back from the state reach codes team, and they will in fact provide free technical assistance of the cannabis energy and water usage findings in the renewable energy ordinance that I've already drafted. And I'm in direct contact with consultant and working with Veronica Goodhart of the Office of Special Program Compliance, and we'll keep Director Fagg and Chair Clark informed. But at least for the moment, I think I can carry that ball as much as possible, and then obviously reach out to staff when additional resources are needed. And in particular, once we get the findings and any adjustments to the ordinance, I think we'd be ready then to work on having a stakeholder input session, particularly with the cannabis stakeholders. But I'll do sort of the research and development with the with Ms. Goodhart and particularly on the consultant. So I'll drive that forward as much as I can, and that is specifically referred to in the document council reviewed last week. Next, also, as the Reach Codes team is working on the multifamily module for existing home energy efficiency model ordinance, and those results should be available probably within the next few weeks at this point. I'll update the ordinance I drafted, and then we'll discuss with Chair Clark and staff what, if anything, can be done to move it forward before additional staff is hired, because that's also, I believe, on the list of council directed items. And the city may want to consider retaining consultant to work on outreach and implementation, similar to what's happening with the foodware ordinance, because where I think this is resource intensive is actually work that can be done by a consultant. And for example, South Lake Tahoe just launched an RFP for a consultant. So I actually do have a model of an RFP to help out on consulting. This is something that traditionally could be outsourced to a consultant, just as the foodware folks are working on some things. So maybe Chair Clark and Director Fagg, once I have an updated text, we can talk about next steps on that. Next is Governor Newsom proposed spending $22 billion on climate, water, and wildfire initiatives in the budget plan that was released last Monday. Budget proposal $6.1 billion in new funds for clean transportation program funds, including $256 million in clean car rebates and other programs for low-income families, and $900 million to build electric vehicle chargers in low-income neighborhoods. And as I mentioned, that's a good example of equity components in state energy programs. On the regulatory front, the biggest news is the Public Utilities Commission proposed net energy metering decision, or solar, which could substantially increase the price customers would pay for energy. City Council approved resolution at last week's council meeting calling on the CPUC to protect rooftop solar and expand access to all households, particularly those of low and moderate income. There was initial thought that this would be on the CPUC agenda for next week, and Governor Newsom indicated more work needs to be done, so that decision has been deferred. But I continue to follow that, given the potential impact of Palm Springs solar users. And also on regulatory, Energy Commission staff anticipates issuing final guidelines for the build program for all electric low-income housing. Technical assistance provider is now starting to provide some pre-application guidance, and I'll keep Commissioner Baker informed for the DAP projects. And also I've been working with the developer team on the Monarch project. So that actually is about to hit go live in just a couple of days. After talking about it for months, we're almost there.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner.
So a lot going on, but I'm continuing in my spare time, quote unquote, to work on all of these matters.
Thank you, David. Any questions for him? The next item is World Environment Day, which I think we've covered sufficiently. And then move on.
Can I just say something, Roy?
Sure, sorry.
No, it's okay. So World Environment Day is Sunday, June 5th this year. So it does happen to fall on a weekend. Last year we had the virtual art award ceremony on Saturday, the 5th. So it will be the Sunday this year. And I just want to put out there, I did have, Commissioner Barrett and Commissioner Gautier that were on that standing subcommittee, but because we're not having an in-person event, I don't know if we need that. But if there were a virtual way to connect with the community for World Environment Day, or to do a virtual movie or something that we might sponsor to at least, help get the word out that it's, everyone thinks about Earth Day, but a lot of people still don't know about World Environment Day, and it is an international celebration. So I just want to throw that out there. If anyone would like to work on that with me, I would like to invite you.
Thank you, Jennifer. So if anybody is interested, please let her know. The next item is Night Sky. Alex?
Sure. Yes, that's me. We have progressed a little bit since our last meeting, but not too far, which is entirely on me and my holiday delay. But what I've done at the advice of Chair Clark and Tracy is to compile like a formal collection of notes of some of the other policies that I've investigated, some from California, some from other desert cities, kind of going into more detail of what sections of their codes they updated and how they went about it, and where possible, notes on maybe what outreach or enforcement strategies they use, which are harder to come by. So I've made that, I think it's a 1.5 page kind of document with different links and examples and notes, and I sent it to Chair Clark and Tracy. And we tried to squeeze in a meeting before this meeting where we are today, but again, that's on me. We didn't quite make it, and we're hoping to meet soon, the three of us, I believe, and kind of dive deeper into detail and figure out the nitty-gritty of what we think Palm Springs is willing and able to tackle for our dark skies policy initiatives.
So thank you for that report which you provided, and I spent some time, I read it, I read some of the references, and I went back and reread the last report that Rob McCann had provided to the commission at the time that he left. And I think I'm ready, and I'm not sure about Tracy, but I'd suggest that we schedule that meeting sometime soon, certainly before the next commission meeting.
Mm-hmm.
We can kind of narrow things down. One of the suggestions had been that we try to do things that are reasonable and easy with outreach, and not get involved with any kind of code. And so we still need help from the city staff with that. And I think we'll be ready to do that once we've actually had a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Is that agreeable with you, Tracy? And does anybody else want to participate?
I'm interested, depending on when you have the meeting.
Great. Thank you. So Tracy and I will work together and we'll get something set up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. The next is bicycle routes and cycling. Jake, do you have anything? I know there's been quite a bit of email going back and forth about priorities and the survey, and actually would like to acknowledge Alex for doing an editing job on the bicycle survey as well.
Yeah, that's all I had to offer was that, Alex, thanks for offering the suggestion to pare it down. There is an email chain. I think there's also some discussion on, working with that group to understand its overall purpose and mission and how it relates to our strategy as a commission and our climate action plan. So hopefully we will have more to report next month. And yeah, thank you to Tracy for initiating more of the dialogue back with that group. So we'll keep you all posted, but nothing to report just yet, other than we finally got a survey pared down that could go live should they decide that they want to move forward with it.
Right. And that survey is one of the things that was on the priority list that we sent out as well. So,
Right.
Jake or
Yes.
Alex, I have a couple of thoughts. I think the survey overall looks good, but I have a couple of thoughts on it based on my experience in doing surveys. So I can just email those to you if you want. It's not major, it's just some tweaks. Are you interested? Do you want me to email that to you, to Alex also, to?
Sure. If you are on that broader group, then I would just include them so it's visible for everyone, the feedback that you'll be sharing.
I'm not sure which broader group.
Whoever you shared whoever you saw the survey originally, then sure, just share them in that chain. So
I never saw the original survey, so I'm just responding to the survey that's in today's minutes.
You can
Today's
send
pack.
it to me and I can make sure that the bike group receives it.
Okay, I'll do that.
there we go. Thanks, Tracy.
Okay.
Of course.
Right. Something we need to do as we discuss priorities is decide where the buck stops, because there actually have been a lot of comments on the survey, even Alex revisions, and somebody will have to have the final word, but we'll deal with that when the time comes. Moving on then to water conservation.
Okay, a DWA board met this morning and I updated them on the airport demonstration garden. On January 4th, the State Water Resources Control Board adopted emergency regulations due to the drought. Regulations prohibit using potable water publicly for watering publicly owned or maintained medians and construction or street sweeping unless no other alternative is available. And DWA staff has coordinated on this matter with the city of Palm Springs. As I mentioned before, DWA board approved an additional $300,000 in funding for water conservation projects for the rest of this fiscal year, with $265,000 of that directed to grass removal and the remaining $35,000 intended for smart irrigation controller program. The turf conversion money is for several large HOA projects. In addition, the city has expressed interest in accelerating turf removal at the airport following the new drought regulation. So that is actually in addition to the demonstration garden. And I presume that it's Stacy and her team who might have been in direct contact, or the airport folks, because I don't think that's flowed through our group. But DWA is discussing with the city additional turf removals.
And I believe that is Stacy who's been working on that, right, Tracy?
Stacy's working on it. It has been flowing through sustainability as well, and also out of the assistant city manager's office. Those locations are identified, and then of course it will be a funding request.
Great. Okay, that's fine. And then finally, overall water use was down 7% in December. 2021 compared with the same month in the 2013 baseline year, and 17% below the 2013 baseline over the last 12 months. Water use was down 4.3% in December compared with December 2020. So there is still room for improvement to meet the voluntary state conservation goal of 15%. That's it for water.
Thank you. The next item is wellness. Carl, do you have anything? I think we're at a wait and see point with the.
Yeah, I got the letter. You were talking to the people from the American Lung Society, I believe it was. Yeah, so that's where we left off. We gave everything over to Human Rights Commission, and they reported out. So that's where we stand. We're waiting up for council.
Thank you. And Desert Community Energy.
Thank you. First, I'm pleased to announce that Commissioner Barrett has replaced me on the DC Community Advisory Committee and the Palm Springs Working Group, and we're starting to work on the agenda for a CAC meeting next month, which will include an update on DC's new outreach program. So Commissioners Barrett and Baker expect an email probably from Liz Barnwell, our new management analyst at CVAG. DC board met last week and approved an $8 million revolving line of credit. City council will consider issuing a guarantee of the loan obligation at its meeting next week. And so I've been working on that. And then finally, I'm working on evaluating responses to the RFP for consultant help design distributed energy resources program. And DC has also launched an RFP for a new renewable energy and storage procurement program together with other community choice aggregators, and responses are due February 4th for that program. So a lot going on.
Thank you, David. Any questions? So now we'll move on to the last item in our agenda, and that's commissioner comments and upcoming agenda. As we do every month, we'll go commissioner by commissioner and ask if there are any additional comments related to this meeting or any suggestions for the upcoming agenda. So we'll start with David Friedman.
Nothing further. Thank you, Chair Clark.
Carl?
Nothing more.
Don?
Nothing more.
Randy?
Nothing further, no, thank you.
Jennifer?
Nothing from me.
Okay, thank you. Alex?
Nothing from me either. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jake?
Nothing from me.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So that concludes the items in the agenda for this meeting. Our next meeting will be on Tuesday, February 15th at 5:30, expected to be on video teleconference as it has been. So at this point, we'll go through our regular process and not really ask for a motion and a second on adjourning, but unless there's an objection, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting this evening. And I want to thank everybody for a productive meeting and for the good comments. And there'll be correspondence in between. And our next meeting will be on February 15th. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Chair Clark.
Thanks, Chair.